I don't know why YouTube keeps changing things on me. It used to be where you could go into the, um, I guess it's advanced settings, and you could make it so that you could make it the other way. We used to do class all the time. And I don't know why they switched it on me again. So annoying. It's like, you know what? Just like when you're in real estate. When you're in real estate, you know what happens? They constantly change the zip forms. You think you know how to do the forms, and then you go in there to send them to somebody, and guess what? They're constantly changed. So the ever-changing world of real estate and technology, right? So welcome, and I'm glad that you're all coming in to join me. Unfortunately, some of you won't be in here live and you can't ask me questions. However, where we're taking off from tonight is in the Walt Hubbard Principles book. I was working out of this book before, and we had a lot of students that really loved working through this book because what it does is it explains real estate in the easiest way possible. And I started doing it when I was traveling a lot with the National Association of Realtors, actually the local association and CAR. So getting involved with your association, so I can't talk tonight. And this is going to be taped and on there forever, but oh well, right? We're all normal, we're not perfect. And thank you so much for joining me, whomever you are. I'm really glad you decided to join me. And hopefully more people will get to know that we're going to be going through the lessons again. So we were going through the lessons pretty slowly so that everybody could learn everything. And again, we're in the Walt Hubbard Principles book. This is the 15th edition, and many people bought this edition off of, I believe, what is that? Amazon had it, and that other one, I forget what it's called, the one that I used to buy stuff on all the time. But anyway, you can buy it. I know Amazon had it, but they also are out of Covina if you want to look them up. They're at Educational Textbook Company, and their website is I can't read it, sorry, educationaltextbook.com. If you need to know, put a note in my comments and I'll go ahead and let you know. So to those of you who joined us, if you're anybody that's returning that comes and sees me all the time, I can't see the comments because they made me flip it the other way, but we're going to still keep going tonight, and I'm going to try to keep going as much as I can. What has slowed me down a lot is I'm taking care of my 92-year-old mother, and let me tell you, some of the companies, when somebody in your family passes away, they make it very difficult to try to figure everything out. And I'm going to talk about that on one of my other videos, but right now we're here to go through principles. And if you're thinking about getting your real estate license, there's 3 classes you have to take. Number 1 is principles. Number 2 is practice. And number 3 is an elective. Whatever you do, try not to take real estate law or finance. Those are the 2 as hard electives unless you're going to be an attorney. Hey Dara, how you doing? I'm doing great. I'm going to try to stick to the class, and then maybe what we'll do is when we're done with the class, we'll go on and do some more questions. It says, I'm registered in the Realty Institute. They're the best in San Bernardino to get your license. Okay, Realty Institute is the one that we actually recommend. The guy's name is Blair Black. When I got my broker's license back in 2006, I went through his company, and I took my principles class in college at Cypress College in 1979. Isn't that crazy? 1979. And then I didn't get my license until 1986. So if you've taken your classes a long time ago and you don't remember stuff, feel free to watch these classes and make sure you do have your credits because, hi, how you doing? It's Maria. So if you took your classes a long time ago, I just talked to a girl today who took her classes a long time ago, and what I was told is when you go to register, what happens, you're very welcome. She's saying thank you for the information. I love helping you guys. And so anyway, she called and she said she took her classes 3 or 4 years ago. And I said, well, you know what? You got to take practice over because practice has changed. It added the bias training. So we all thought they were going to add a separate class for the bias training. But instead of doing that, what they did is they put it into the practice class. So anybody who has not done their bias training and they took their practice class prior to last year, starting January 1st of this year, you have to take practice over. So if you go on there and you think you're able to register, go ahead and register and try to get a test date. But I bet once you press the button, They might say you have to take practice. The best place to take it is where Dara's taking it, which is Realty Institute out of San Bernardino. They have a great website, and it's pretty easy to get through Realty Institute's classes. So I highly recommend people to go through that and then come and join us on our exam prep, because our exam prep will teach you everything that you need to know to pass the exam. Not just the material that you need to know, but I give you scenarios and actual things that happen to me in real estate. And people say that they hear me talking to them in the exam. And what we did was we added brokers to it. So if you already have your license and you want to get your broker's license, what you do is you take our class, we give you additional information, and so far all of our brokers have passed. And I highly, highly suggest that once you've had your license for 2 years full time as a real estate agent, then you go ahead and you take your broker's class. Now you need 5 more classes in order to take the broker's test. So it's 3 for your original salesperson, then 5 more for a total of 8. But as I promised, we were going to do principles. So I am working out of the like I said, Walt Hubbard Principles book. This is the 15th edition. So I'm looking online on YouTube and I'm seeing a lot of classes where they're doing, I don't know, 8th edition, 5th edition. And so that means they're pretty old. So make sure you look at when they are. But these books are constantly updated. So I looked where I ended last. So the last class I did was class number 20, and we ended on page 145 in this book. And that was what we were talking about when a seller gets an offer and they turn around and they change even one thing. And if they change even one little thing, it's a counter offer. And you have to do it on a counter offer form. And if a seller does a counter offer, it's looked at as a rejection of the original offer. So what I want to make sure you guys all know, because real estate world is changing, you've got to be professional. You've got to know what you're doing. And you guys are lucky if you're brand new. If you're brand new, you're going to learn how we have to do real estate in the future. So you're going to get your license and you're going to learn from people that are starting to do it a different way. So you're almost the people who are all in the business are almost joining you guys and learning a new way of real estate. And that's a whole nother video I have to do, because some of the changes I think are not fair. I think that the lawsuit that happened against realtors should have happened against the one real estate agent that the sellers worked with, but that's only my opinion. So let's get into the book. It's page 145. I'm going to read what it says in the book. That way, obviously, if you don't have the book, of course, my mom, who loves to call me in the middle of everything I do, decided to call me just now. So hopefully it doesn't affect you too much when she keeps trying to call through. She is 92. And that's what stopped me from being on live all the time, because every time I turn around, she pops in on me. So where we left off was when accepting an offer on your home, the seller changes one of the terms of the buyer's offer. This is described as a counter offer, most likely a rejection of the original offer. So what I always tell my sellers, if it's one stupid little thing, maybe we go ahead and I call the buyer's agent and we chat about it. And instead of doing it as a counter offer, we can go ahead and do an amendment. Now, it depends on what it is, but you have to make sure you talk to your broker. Always talk to your broker. You have the textbook. I'm on page 145. 145 in the Principles book, 15th edition of Walt Hubbard. So always make sure you talk to your broker. I'm happy to answer all your questions. However, if I answer a question, then you go back to your broker, you're very welcome. Your broker might not be very happy that you took the advice of a YouTuber over them. However, let your broker know that I've been an investor since 1979. I got my real estate license in 1986. Prior to that, I worked as a loan processor. Then I started my own mortgage company in 1989, and I kept that until my brother passed away, but I'm still able to do loans and real estate, and I'm still moving forward. So keep moving forward. That's the most important thing, right? So I'm not selling my business. I'm not doing any of that. So I don't want people to go, oh, you have to say your license number. I will say my broker's license number really quickly. It's 01018706. So when you get your license number, it won't be, the first letters won't be 01, because that's for us old folks. So inspection advisory for buyers. So the inspection advisory for buyers is important to make sure that your buyers know that they should get a home inspection. Real estate agents are not contractors. Now, I have a lot of home improvement background because my son is a contractor. He started when he was 15 and a half with myself, and we were flipping houses. And so every time he said I couldn't do something, or he'd go, Sharon, you can't do that. And he was my 15-year-old son calling me Sharon. And I'd say, why? And he'd say, well, we have to do calculations, or it's a load bearing wall. You know, most real estate agents are not contractors. So the smartest thing a buyer could do is get a home inspection. And the home inspection is going to tell you, you know, is there a problem with the air conditioning? Is there a problem with the electrical? Because walking through a home, so make sure you understand that the purchase contract is an as-is contract. If the seller wanted to fix the property prior to listing it, he would have fixed the property before he listed the property. So when you're going through, make sure that your buyers know that the home inspection is for you to understand what you're getting yourself into, such as there's a movie out called The Money Pit. And they bought the house, and I don't know if they did a home inspection, but I'll tell you something, if you do a home inspection, the better home inspectors are more expensive. So you can find a friend who's a contractor, or you can hire a lower cost home inspector. They may be a good fit for you. But there's one company, they're called Elite Home Inspection. They've been in business forever, and they go everywhere. And I don't get any credit from them. They don't even know I said that, but they're pretty darn good. A little bit expensive, but you get what you pay for. I always say that, right? So going on, it says the home inspection advisory for buyers. Property inspections are important. The physical condition of the property and improvements being purchased are not guaranteed by either the seller or the broker, except as specifically set forth in the purchase agreement. For this reason, salespeople are required by their brokers to advise a buyer. I highlighted this in yellow. Advise your buyer of the right to have a personal and professional inspection of the property that they're planning to purchase. Furthermore, brokers have been advised by their attorneys to have potential buyers sign a buyer inspection advisory form to protect the salesperson and the broker. So everybody thinks that the contracts and the disclosures are all for just the buyers and the sellers, but guess what? They're also to protect us. And I say that many times, okay? This form expressively states in bold print, you are strongly advised to investigate the condition and suitability of all aspects of the property. If you do, you're acting against the advice of your broker. I do not know why people call me in the evening after like 8 o'clock, because most of the time I'm teaching. So if I'm not teaching live, you guys, I'm teaching in the evening. So next week we're teaching the real estate, actually this weekend. This weekend, on Saturday and Sunday, we're doing the real estate exam prep. And I know some of you guys might say, well, I'm not even done with my classes yet. Well, let me give you a hint. You're allowed, once you sign up to take our exam prep, you're allowed to take it 3 times. And I strongly suggest that if you do it, you might be able to pass your finals much easier, and then go ahead and take it again when you get your test date, and then right before your test, if you want to spend that kind of time. And spending that kind of time is wise because I give a lot of real estate stories. Not only that, don't you want to pass the first time? A lot of our students pass the first time by taking our class only once. It's up to you what you want to do. But we are teaching the real estate exam prep on Saturday at 8:30 in the morning. It goes to 5 p.m. We do it all day Saturday and all day Sunday. It's approximately 16 hours of material. And then we'll repeat the class. It's 3 weekends in a row coming up. But on Monday night at 6 p.m., Monday night at 6 p.m., ending at 9:30, going Monday through Thursday. We might add Friday because there's a lot of material. We're doing the MLO exam prep. That's the mortgage loan originator. And let me tell you something, that test is a whole lot harder than the real estate test. So I'm gonna stop trying to do commercials in there because I really wanna get more forward and finish chapter 5, because chapter 5 is really important. We're so close to finishing it. So back to chapter 5, and realize anytime you want to rewatch these on YouTube, you can fast forward and go through stuff that you don't want to listen to or you already know. So the inspection advisory points out that the buyer is not relying on the salesperson with regards to the condition of the property, and instead is advised to investigate the condition for themselves. So again, the buyer's advisory is to make sure that the buyer knows what they're getting into. The next one that they talk about at the bottom of page 145 is the seller agent required disclosures. So the transfer disclosure statement is called the TDS. The TDS is one of the most important documents that your seller needs to fill out. So the TDS is the transfer disclosure statement. And once you get into real estate, a lot of the forms, they all have letters. It's TDS, it's an ADVID, and it's buyers. The new buyers agreement is BRBC. So sometimes, sometimes when I'm like in a hurry and I'm not really, thinking about all my real estate terms, and somebody goes, "Oh, we need the SRAR," and I'm just like, "Oh God, just tell me what it is so I can get it." So you've got to get used to all these letters instead of full disclosure names. So the TDS, the transfer disclosure statement, you as a licensed agent are not allowed to fill it out for your client. I'm so sorry, you guys. Next time I do this live, I'm going to try to do airplane mode, or I guess I need to call all the powers that be and tell them not to call me after 8 o'clock. But anyway, because I'm going to try to do this as often as I can, because I want to get past the principles book so that we can get into the practice book and I can get into the 20-hour MLO book. So I'm going to keep adding this information. And if you're not here live, you can always come and watch it by yourself. And that way you can fast forward me too. And if you have any questions at all, go on my comments and I will definitely answer your comments. So the transfer disclosure statement is where the buyer I said the wrong word. The seller goes through and tells the buyer on this form everything that they know that's wrong with the property, and they have to disclose everything. So that form, the TDS, is kind of married. I did say that word married. Kind of married to the form that the real estate agents have to do, which is the agent walkthrough, where we have to do the agent visual inspection. The agent visual inspection is where we walk through the home and we write down everything that we know. Now, if a lawsuit comes about and the transfer disclosure statement and the agent visual inspection were not done, then both the seller and you as the agent have a possible lawsuit on you. But if your sellers did their form and you did your form and you did them correctly, you're going to be okay. It's just that a lot of lawsuits happen when you don't do what you're supposed to do. And with all the new forms out, you got to do what you're supposed to do, right? So the transfer disclosure statement is filled out completely by the seller. So basically it goes through everything that can possibly be wrong with the house, and it asks the seller, do you have any plumbing issues? Do you have any electrical issues? Do you have any roofing issues? Have you painted the house in the last 6 years? Now the interesting part is it says on the real estate exam, this is FYI to our Department of Real Estate. On the real estate exam, it says, what's the one thing that a seller does not have to disclose on their TDS? And the answer per the Department of Real Estate is repairs. Well, that's not true, because right on the TDS it says, when did you last paint? Did you do any changes on the home? It asks you a ton of questions. But on the California real estate exam, it says that you do not have to disclose repairs. That's wrong in the real world, right on the exam. So I'm sorry, but I didn't write the exam. And I did ask, I raised my hand, I talked to the right people, and I said, can I be please in when you're updating the exam? Because I know all the test questions that you have, and I know which ones are wrong, and I know which ones are worded incorrectly. There's a couple that are worded incorrectly. That's why you need my exam prep, because I go through some of the things that are incorrect on the real estate exam that you have to know that are wrong in the real world, but right on the test. So you got to watch for stuff like that. And I promise you guys, now that I'm back on track, when I do this, I won't talk so much about other things. I'll try to stay focused on the book that we're in, which is Principles, page 145. So the transfer disclosure statement, what it does is it goes through everything, and your seller has to go through and mark everything. If they mark yes on something, then there's a line underneath it as to why did you write yes? So like my client had to write roof caps are missing. So like it said, any problems with the roof, she marked yes, and it said roof caps are missing. So, and then there was a problem with the electrical where we didn't know if a fuse was out or whatever it was. So we went ahead and we went, okay, fuse is out affecting the electrical, should be checked by your home inspector. So we wrote all that stuff down. She wrote it all down. She didn't know how to do it. So how I can help her, I can't touch it. I can't do it for her, but I can sit next to her. And if she has a question, I can answer the question kind of generally, but you can't tell your client what to do because they're the only ones that live in the house, so they know what's wrong with the home. So they mark everything and then they sign it, and the seller's agent gives it to the other side. Now you have to do that in the time frame of the disclosures. So from the time that you take the listing to the time that you get somebody to put an offer in, you really want to go through all those disclosures with your seller so that when you get the offer in, you can immediately send it over, okay? And then the buyers get it because you have time frames that you have to meet on your contracts. So on page 145 at the bottom, it says the transfer disclosure statement requires the disclosure of all known, and actually on the exam it says known or should be known. So if it's something that's obvious that your seller should know about their house, they have to disclose it. Known or should be known, such as the presence of mold, drug lab use, military ordinances, Mello-Roos bonds, and taxes. Additional disclosures may be needed for further details for this information. The following is an alphabetical list of the disclosure forms. I'm going to go through the alphabetical list of the disclosure forms that may be typical and may be required in a residential real estate transaction. Agent's inspection disclosure. This is designed for use by the agent on the property that are exempt from California Civil Code requirements. Agent inspection disclosure. I think that's supposed to be the ADVID, which is your agent visual inspection. And the agent visual inspection, when they do talk about the agent visual inspection, I actually have on this YouTube channel me doing one of my clients' visual inspection. And it was so funny because I recorded it on YouTube, because on YouTube you don't have to wait for an upload. And so they were able to see it, and I walked them through it, and they laughed at it and thought it was funny. And I said, well, it's not funny, but it is my visual inspection. And if you have any questions, we can watch the video together. So we did. And then I asked them if I could upload it on my YouTube channel, and they said, yeah. And so if you want to watch it, it's right there. And it's a white kitchen. So going on, the next one says buyer advid. So buyer has an advid too, but it says documents whether or not the Federal Foreigner Investment in Real Estate Property Tax Act withholding is required. So a buyer may buy a property from a seller, and how they have it in all the books is that the buyer holds back 15%. And on the state exam, again, it's wrong. I'm sorry, but it is. It says the question on the state exam says it's called FRIPTA, and it's the Foreign Investors Real Estate Property Tax Act. Got it? Foreign Investors Real Estate Property Tax Act. On the test, the answer is FRIPTA. On the question, and it's wrong, the question says, what act must the buyers hold back 15% of the seller's proceeds? Well, that's not going to happen in the real world. It's not the buyer that holds it back, but that's the question on the test. And the answer is FRIPTA. But in the real world, in case anybody needs to know, is the escrow company holds back the 5%. And if the seller is a foreign investor, then escrow will send that 15% for their capital gains tax to the IRS. Okay, got it? So and the reason this happened, the reason FRIPTA happened, and I'm not going to explain every form, but the reason FRIPTA happened was we had people coming, foreign investors, and they would buy a house. In my own neighborhood, there's some of these where they're still vacant. And, you know, when we bought our houses, they were 350 to 450, 350 to 450. Now, remember, I bought my house when I was 26 years old. So that was like a long time ago. And so I know, like 5 years ago. Now, it was like 35 years ago or so, okay? So it was 1989. So now these houses are worth a lot more. Well, if foreign, so the reason I know some of these are foreign investors is what they do is they buy the house and they just let it sit. In California, they don't rent it out because California has very, 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 very bad property provider tenant laws. I don't know why the state of California is so against property providers, which are mom and pop landlords, or mom and pop, we call them mom and pop landlords. It's wrong in so many ways, and that's going to be a whole nother video. But what happens is what they do is they buy the property on FRIPTA and they don't do anything with it. They don't rent it out. They just let it sit there and they let it gain in value. And then what happens is, let's say they sell it now for $1.4 million and they bought it for $400,000. They made $1 million. And before FRIPTA, the foreign investors would just take that $1 million and say, see ya. And then our government wouldn't get the capital gain tax that they owe them, which on $1 million is roughly around $150,000 to $200,000. So they came up with FRIPTA and they have escrow holding back that money. On the state exam, it says the buyer's holding back 15%. So make sure you know that. I'm trying to get through this because I want to get through chapter 5. So the next one says, let's see, confirmation real estate agency relationship. This is used to comply with California Civil Code requirement to confirm agency relationship in a transaction. This clause is pre-printed in the CAR purchase contract. Also, we have the agency relationship form. You have to fill out an agency relationship form prior to showing anybody a house. If you're representing a buyer, you have to fill out an agency relationship form prior to, everything's prior to, agency relationship form, listing contract. So you're working with sellers, agency relationship form, purchase agreement, BRBC, buyer's relationship, before you show them a home. So you always do the agency relationship first, okay? So that's your disclosure, making sure that they know that there is a relationship. One of the forms that they say is required, but now what you have to understand is there's lots of forms. When you go into the ZIP forms, so once you get your license, and this is all over, you go into, in California, we go into the CAR website, California Association of Realtors website, and we go into the ZIP forms. And once you go into the ZIP forms, all your forms are in there. And when you're working with a new buyer, you set up a new buyer file and you pull in the forms that you need to do. Okay, so not all of you will do all the forms. Like right here, it has the database disclosure regarding registered sex offenders. So if you know that somebody in the area was a registered sex offender, you better disclose it to the buyer, because maybe they have kids and they don't want to be around somebody like that. So they may not want to look in that area. Disclosure and consent for representation of more than one buyer or seller. Now, I'm going to read this word for word because it's kind of confusing, and you always have to use this form when you're working with a buyer or a seller. So here goes. This form is used to disclose that a real estate brokerage may, not will, may represent a buyer or a seller that is competing with the broker's principal. Okay. It is also discloses the possibility that the same real estate brokerage company may represent both the buyer and the seller in the same transaction. So when you're a listing agent and you're working at a large office or even a small office, you may have the listing and another agent in your office may have a buyer, and they may overhear you, or you guys may have office meetings, and that's why you have office meetings, to share information. And let's say that you just got a brand new listing and you go, I got a brand new listing. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. This is the neighborhood it's in, and this is what it's listed at. And then somebody else in the room may go, oh my gosh, I just talked to a buyer that's looking for the same thing. And you guys talk about it, and then they tell their buyer about it, and then you show it. And guess what? At the office meeting, you just sold their home. Isn't that cool? And that's another reason to be so involved with your local association. Don't look at your other real estate agents. Don't look at your competitors as competitors. Look at them as people that you work together with, because they may, if you get to know them and they get a listing and they know that you work with buyers, they may contact you and go, hey, I just got this new listing. And you're like, oh, cool. So always go to the meetings that you can. And I talk to new agents all the time, and they ask me, how do I get new business? And I said, go to as many meetings as you can. Go to your city, not the city council meeting, but your city that has the, I keep forgetting what they're called, when they mingle and they do networking. So go to any networking thing you can. I had a new agent that he took my class and passed the real estate exam. And I told him, go to your city networking meetings. He went, the first meeting he went to after he got his license, he met somebody that was looking to buy a home. He represented them, and he sold them an $800,000 home. And that was like within a month of getting his license. You guys, there's business out there that you can get. You just got to get past this and get your license. So let's see. I talked about disclosure representing more than one buyer. Disclosure regarding real estate agency relationship. That was the agency agreement, and that has the civil code. You have to do it. Homeowner's Guide to Earthquake Safety. So we live in California and we are the earthquake state. And it's really funny because my son and I used to, like when there was an earthquake, we'd go like this, we'd like ride it, like we're surfing. And so what we did, my son did a lot of work at our home. My home was his practice ground for becoming a contractor. So the curtains behind me you see is a 17-foot slider door that is $7,000. Well, because we were flipping houses so much, guess what? Home Depot saw my son walk in, and he walks in and they're like, I know you and your mom flip and you're always here. We have these 3 doors and windows that somebody custom ordered and they don't want them anymore. And my son's like, well, what am I going to do with them? And he's like, I'm just telling you because I'll give them to you for $700 for all of them. So my son calls me. He's like, do we want to get them for $700? I'm like, for all of them? Yeah. And when he came home and we talked about it, I said it. He still to this day says he said it. But I go, we can take our house out 3 feet and open up so it has the 17-foot slider door. And he says he did that. But anyway, so why did I say that? Earthquake. Okay, so this slider door is below his room, his old room. And so when the earthquake came after he put that door in, even though he did the calcs, even though he put in a new beam to hold the house up, as soon as the earthquake started, instead of riding it, he ran out the door and I'm like, what? He goes, I'm not sure that door's gonna hold. And I'm like, you're such an idiot. But that's my son and I, we joke around. And so we are the earthquake state here in California. And you have to realize that if you listen to some of my stories, I have clients that moved from back east to here and they literally glued things down because the earthquake they thought was so bad. So we are an earthquake state and we have to disclose it. It's called the El Quest Pro Olio Act. Let's see, where was that? So it says disclosure regarding agency. Oh yes, Homeowner's Guide to Earthquake Safety. The El Quest Pro Olio, that's how I say it. And how I remember it is water polo. El Quest reminds me of aqua, and polo, Preolio, is the Earthquake Fault Zone Act. It requires the seller and the agent, the seller and their agent, to disclose to the buyer that the property may be situated in an earthquake fault zone. And that's going to be talked about in chapter 5. But the earthquake fault zones, they're a 1/4 mile wide. And you need to know that they're a 1/4 mile wide. And you need to know that El Quest Pro Olio is the earthquake fault zone. Now, you're going to give them a safety guide on earthquakes. The next one is the lead-based paint. I'm trying to get through this. There's a fly flying around. Lead-based paint and lead-based paint hazard disclosure. So if your home was built prior to 1978, so prior to 1978, your walls were painted with paint that had lead in it. And I'm an expert on this because my dad, he was a chemical engineer. And prior to 1978, he was hired by a company called Kerr-McGee. And he is the man who figured out the calculations to get the lead out of the paint. So when you're wondering why I'm so smart, that everybody thinks I'm so smart, is my dad was an overachiever. The smartest guy in Case Institute was valedictorian. And he got the lead out of the paint prior to 1978. And so in 1978, what happened was the paint, they figured out how to get the lead out, and then Glidden bought the formula from my dad's patent, and the rest is history because now our paint does not have lead in it. And because of that, any home that was built prior to 1978 possibly has lead paint. So you just have to disclose it. You do not have to fix it or remediate it. You only have to disclose it. And anybody that's looking at older homes should know that there's lead-based paint possibly in there. So use to comply with federal requirements for disclosures of any known lead-based paint or lead-based paint hazard. This is the booklet on any housing constructed prior to 1978. From the seller to the buyer, or from the owner to the landlord or tenant. So if you're renting out your property, you have to disclose this too. And that's another thing that once you guys get in the world of real estate, and if you work with mom and pop landlords, you really got to help them out because there's laws and rules in California that just keep popping up. It's like they think it's okay to keep adding laws and regulations to people who 25, 35, 50 years ago bought rental property so that they would have a retirement, and now they're just making it almost impossible. And my mom's 92 and she's a landlord, and she knows none of these laws. And how is she supposed to know them? If her tenants take her to court and sue a 92-year-old woman because they destroyed the house, how fair is that? Doesn't make any sense to me. Anyway, so that's the lead-based paint. Manufactured homes and mobile homes. Now, some of you may think you're not going to sell them, but let me tell you something. I just spoke to one of my students. It had to be about 2.5, 3 years ago. He was going through what you're going through, all this paperwork and all this information. And he called me and he's like, Sharon, I really don't think I can do this. And I'm like, why? He's like, well, you just have to learn so much. And there's so much information and there's so much liability. And I don't know that I want to do this. And I am like, look, there's no reason not to. You've come this far. You made a decision to get your license. Get your license. Worst thing that can happen is you get your license and you don't use it, or you only use it for yourself, because you can get your license and represent yourself and have knowledge. But I would say, if you don't know much, hire a professional real estate agent and watch them do your transaction and learn from your transaction. But anyway, he got his license. He's had his license now for 2 years, over 2 years. And he called me to tell me thank you, because he has done 50 transactions in the last 2 years, and they're mobile homes. And I said, really? And I said, how is that going? And he said, well, he's near, he marketed a mobile home that was in a 55 plus community. Thank you guys for joining. I love it. And anyway, he did 50 transactions because he started marketing this 55 plus community. And now anytime somebody, I joked with him, I go, oh, so whenever somebody dies, you get a listing? And he goes, yeah. And I go, I'm so sorry. But anyway, his name's Michael, and I believe he's out in Redlands, and he's doing really well. So you guys, you can do it too. If he can do it, you can do it. If I can do it, you can do it. Just if you get to the point where you don't think you can make it, call me or put it in my comments, because I'm here to help you. And so make sure that you just keep moving forward. So he's doing mobile homes, and this says manufactured homes or mobile home transfer disclosure statement. This is a form that's required in the sale of manufactured homes. The seller is primarily responsible for disclosing the presence of Mello-Roos taxes or tax liens or other assessments. This is usually stated in the transfer disclosure statement. So I don't know why that statement was underneath the manufactured or mobile homes, but Mello-Roos is an additional tax that a lot of people don't even know they have. So the tax in California is 1.25%. 1% goes to the state of California, and the quarter goes to your county. Now, what happens is if your taxes are more than 1.25%, they're more than 1.25% because you're in a Mello-Roos zone. And what Mello-Roos is these developers decided that we're paying for streets, curbs, sidewalks. We're paying for everything. We're paying for the police department, the schools. And you know, we can't afford to do that. If we stop paying for that, then we could sell homes a lot less expensive. So what they decided to do was do a Mello-Roos bond. And I believe, I always say it in class, I want to be careful because this is online. I believe the reason it's called Mello-Roos is it was Mr. Mello and Mr. Roos. I don't know how it would be like to be married to Mr. Mello, especially when you're as hyper as I am, but that's beside the point. So anyways, they were two contractors that brought up this act or law or however you want to call it. It's a bond. And that bond makes it so the new owners, the buyers of the home, pay for all those things. So instead of having 1.25% tax base, you may have 2.25%, or you may have 1 5/8 or 1 7/8. You'll have a higher tax base. Now, originally the Mello-Roos bond was only supposed to be 25 years. So don't ever tell your buyer, oh, we're at 20 years. It's only 5 more years. So you might as well get this house and the taxes will go down. Don't do that, because some of these Mello-Roos bonds are not going down and they're not going anywhere. Now, on the test, they're going to ask you who is responsible. And that's what it just said. The seller is responsible for telling the buyer there's Mello-Roos. Now, I look at it this way. We're the professionals. And so before I take a listing appointment, I look up on the tax roll, how much are the taxes? And then when I do the listing appointment, I ask them, you know, it appears that your taxes are more than the normal tax base, do you know if you have a Mello-Roos bond? And if they don't know, you can check with the county tax assessors, because you need to make sure that you're protecting your seller. If your seller doesn't know, you know how to find out. So don't expect your seller to do stuff that you should probably look up before you even go on the listing appointment. The other reason you want to look up their Mello-Roos and their taxes and anything you can about them is so that you're professional enough to tell them things that they may not know. Okay, so going on, it says, let's see, then it has a methane contamination notice. I have never had to use that. Okay, so going on, it says mortgage loan disclosure statement. So the mortgage loan disclosure statement complies with the CAR. It says CALBRE, and that's when the Department of Real Estate used to be called the California Bureau of Real Estate. It's not called that anymore. It's called back to the Department of Real Estate. So that requires disclosures when a broker is acting as an arranger of credit, outlines loan terms, cost, and expenses. We're almost done with page 147, and then we'll finish up. So natural hazard disclosure is used to comply with state requirements when a substitution of a zone disclosure report is not used. So make sure you do your natural hazard disclosure. And the natural hazard disclosure statement covers 6 different zones: seismic hazards, which is earthquakes, earthquake fault zones, wildland fire zones, state responsibility areas, flood zones, and dam zones. So it has everything that you need to know. Like if you're selling your client a home and you're in a flood zone, it's going to tell them you're in a flood zone. Now, what's really cool is there's one that's called My Hazard Disclosure, or My NHD Report. And if you ask me or you contact me, I'll tell you how to get there. It's not an app. It's kind of an app. You put it on your phone, and when you go to your client's house, you can put their address in there and you can show them what zone they're in. I think that's pretty cool, because when he downloaded it, so I did that at Woman Up. Woman Up is an event that's not just for women, it's for everybody who's a leader in real estate. And at Woman Up, it's WOMAN, Woman Up. At that, I met the guy at the NHD report. He uploaded it, and it's really a great tool to have when you go on a listing appointment. So I hope that you guys learned a lot of stuff. There's somebody saying, what's the app called? I don't know what the app's called, but what I'll do is when we get off, I will go ahead and look at the app and I'll put it in my comments. So I hope this goes into my comments, and that way I can answer it. If not, you know how to reach me, right? So there's easy ways to reach me. All you have to do is you can go to my YouTube, this is my YouTube. So on one of the videos, it tells you how to take our class. But you can also go to my Instagram, which is SharonButler.RE for real estate pro. So it's SharonButler.RE pro and on Instagram. And then on TikTok, I think it's SS Butler 8. So it's Sharon Suzanne, SS Butler 8. And you can find me there. So thank you so much for joining me. I think that you guys are going to learn a whole lot. I got through page 47. I only got through 47, but the next time we do this, we'll do page 48 and 49, and then we'll do the chapter review, and we'll get into chapter 7 and chapter 6. And chapter 6 is landlord and tenants. That's going to be exciting. So thank you so much for joining me. Share with all your friends and family that want to buy real estate, sell real estate, or get their real estate or broker's license. I'm here to help you guys, and I look forward to helping you again. Thank you for joining me. Bye, you guys. Remember, put it in the chat if you have any questions for me.